Welcome, Joel. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me today.
Oh, always grateful. Always a good time.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, kind of giving us a little bit of a background on who you are, maybe what your past life was, and what brought you to medicine experiences in general.
All right. Well, my name's Joel Lambert. I spent 10 years in the Navy SEAL teams and went all over the world and saw combat in places like Kosovo and Afghanistan. And when I came home from that, got out of the Navy, I got involved in film and television and spent a long time doing a lot of scripted stuff. But then what kind of became my thing was shows on Discovery Channel. I hosted and was the lead talent on several series and one-offs on Discovery Channel. The most well-known one internationally called Manhunt, where I would basically do escape and evasion. I would insert into foreign countries and cross borders, skydive in places I wasn't supposed to be, sneak under through checkpoints on trucks, drop off, and then ping them, let them know I was there. And then their special operations force or fugitive recovery team or specialty tracking unit would come after me with all their assets to try to take me down before I made my extract point anywhere from 1 to 4 days away, where I would be doing deception trails, leaving booby traps, going to ground, doing all of my skills to try to get where I'm going without them being able to catch me. And they'd use dogs and drones and anything they had at their disposal. And it was very, very intense, very exciting. And I did that for many years until I got in a motorcycle accident, smashed my foot, lost that, and still work quite a bit with Discovery Channel and still do quite a bit in the escape and evasion world. But about that time was when I first got introduced to the medicine. And for me, I had heard through friends of mine in the teams, they would mention something about these psychedelic retreats. And every time somebody would say something about it, they'd be like, "Oop," they clam up and they'd say, I signed some NDAs. I'm not supposed to talk about it. But I just clocked it away in the back of my head. I thought, one day I'm going to look into that and I'm going to get to the bottom of this and I'll find out what that is because that fascinated me.
Mm.
I've always, I've always been a spiritual person. I've always been interested and read quite a bit, consciousness and those sorts of explorations. A lot of the metaphysical, philosophical stuff. Read a lot of Ken Wilber. Um, had my fingers in a lot of that, a lot of Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, Hindu stuff, mystical Christianity, all the mystical stuff. I was always very interested in, and so I was interested in this psychedelic thing for SEAL healing and recovery. And I was speaking with an old friend of mine years ago, and I mentioned this in passing that there's some sort of program with the SEALs that are doing something with DMT. And she said, "Oh, I think that's a program that my friend is involved with." I'm like, "Well, let me know because I've this is something I want to know about." And so
Yeah.
she connected me with her friend, who then connected me with the doctor, Martine Polanco, who runs the Mission Within, who's been a pioneer in Iboga and Ibogaine for addiction for 20, 30 years. And he's been running this program with SEALs specifically and a lot of special operations forces. And so she put me in touch with Martine. We had a phone call where basically he was just pre-screening me, asking me why I was interested in this. And I said, a lot of the guys were pursuing the psychedelics because they were really messed up, and having family issues and suicidal thoughts and post-traumatic stuff. And granted, I have a significant VA disability rating and have had issues with all of those things, but I never considered myself, high risk individual or someone who is really struggling or going to swallow a shotgun or you know,
Can you
that sort of thing.
can you explain what a VA disability rating is? Because
Yes,
I'm yeah.
sorry. So
Okay.
after I got out of the SEAL teams, in any unit like the SEAL teams, it really destroys your body and can really get inside your head. And that's
Yes.
something when you go into it, it's not like this has been taken from you and you go into this knowing this and wanting this and laying that out on the table. And I knew I was going to destroy my body and it was worth it to me and it still is. But consequently, when I got out, I ended up getting a VA rating of a percentage of disability, and that entitles you to compensation every month and medical benefits. things like free hunting licenses in the states you're in, stuff like that.
Mm.
And so I have a very high disability rating, uh, but I never considered myself high risk. I wasn't. A lot of the guys have found the medicine and it's healed their relationships, their suicidal ideation, all kinds of
Mm.
significant stuff that I personally did not struggle with, even though I had enough issues to be rated 100% VA disability. So,
And
but
that
when I
was physical mostly, is
physical,
that?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's everything. And
Okay.
it's interesting the way the VA does the math. They'll give you 10% here, 0% here, 30% here, 40% here, 0% here, and that adds up to 30%. The math does not make any sense. It's not, it's VA
Lost, but okay.
government magic. Anyway, I'm at 100%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, I'm grateful for that. But when I was speaking with Martine, he was asking me things like, do you have sleeping issues or hypersensitivity or hyper vigilance? I'm like, well, yes, yes, like most of us
You're
do.
like, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Doesn't everybody?
exactly. I mean, I go clear my backyard with my pistol, and my flashlight every night before I go to bed. Isn't that a normal thing?
Of course.
Everybody does.
Absolutely. I just lock my doors, but okay. Yeah.
But
Understandable.
I really told him, what I'm interested in is in the consciousness and the meeting myself at a very deep level. And he said, you're a great candidate for this. And so they got me in the program and sent me the Mission Within and Martine and the vets, the group that paid for me. They have a phenomenal program. Um, where there's a lot of preparation work and a lot of post integration work as well as the experiences themselves. So it's very well done. And they sent me a workbook of things to go through to prepare for your experience. And I didn't know anything about these medicines. I had dropped acid in high school and eaten mushrooms from a cow patty, in festival settings, sort of things. But as far as the medicinal value of these entheogens, I was clueless about.
Yeah, and Ibogaine is a completely different animal because
And
you're talking
Ibogaine
about.
is yeah, Ibogaine is the great granddaddy. That's a nuclear option.
Yes, yes. And did you do Ibogaine and Iboga, or did you end up?
I did Ibogaine,
Okay.
and then Ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT was the program that I was going into. It was about a month away, and so
Mhm.
I'm going through this booklet where it explains, Iboga, Ibogaine, what it is, what I may experience, what it's good for. Um, a little bit about 5-MeO. I didn't know anything about that. But most of it was, your own, what is your mantra? What are you looking for? It's all about you, it's preparation for you. And one of the things that my coach, my pre experienced coach that I had 3 or 4 phone meetings with told me is he said, the medicine will start working before you take it. I'm like, okay, hippie, sounds good.
Ah, mhm.
And then I started going through the workbook and things started coming up for me that I had pushed away for years and years, whether it was from, my parents divorcing when I was young or traumatic things in high school, stuff in the SEAL teams, stuff I had seen and done in theater that I never wanted to remember ever again. Um, Failures in relationships, things just started coming up that I had shoved down and I wanted them down. And this was not welcome, but the way they were coming up was very gentle and and it was welcomed. It was, and I thought, okay, this is what he meant. And it really is. It's working already.
Mm.
This is crazy. These things started coming up and just to, they just came up. Nothing happened with them. They just came up and presented themselves to me. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Okay, I'm willing to face that. And that's really all it was. And so over the course of a couple of weeks, I did this workbook, and then I got ready to go down to Mexico for my retreat. And so we met in San Diego, and we all drove down, and there were 5 of us guys going through it. There were 2 former SEALs who were facilitating,
Mm.
and 2 female, professional facilitator therapist people, and then there was the doctor Martine and his medical staff. And we drove down to Mexico, this beautiful house by the ocean, and they set everything up, and we had this fire ceremony where we wrote down what we wanted to get rid of and face and burned it, and you know said what we wanted to say in front of all the guys. And it was four SEALs and one Army Ranger, and we're all like, nobody's saying anything. We're
Did it feel
all,
very,
all blocked down. Yeah.
yeah, did it feel very much sort of reminiscent of your time when you were in the military because you were with those kinds of men, or did you feel?
Great to be with these kind of men, but what we were doing was very, very different.
Yeah,
And
of course.
the manner of it just being, an opener, a bringing to the surface opening kind of thing. That's not what you do. It gets shoved down and it gets pushed in a corner, and you deal with it later, so you can get the job done. And
Right.
so there's a stoicism there that's part of it, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what was interesting to me is that we were doing these ceremonial kind of things, and the two female facilitators, they're smudging us and saging us and ringing chimes and waving crystals around, but it doesn't feel goofy at all. I mean, this is kind of shit that you see in Soul Cycles and stuff. And you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. But this had a gravitas and a reality to it, and so I'm just accepting it all. It's all cool. They give us our iboga, and it's measured out for our body weight, and it's in some capsules. And so we kind of ceremonially take the iboga and then go upstairs and lay down on our mattresses with our eye shades on and wait for whatever is going to happen. And I had the only experience I had heard of with iboga or ibogaine was one of the guys had written up his experience, and that was one of the things that I got in my little preparation package. And he left his body, and a green dragon picked him up, and he toured the universe with this green dragon. I'm like, that's badass. I'm all about that. That
Go
sounds
on a
like a
green
blast to
dragon
me.
ride.
Let the dragon come pick me up and let's go tour the universe. It sounds wonderful. So I'm waiting for the green dragon, and I'm waiting there. Something gonna happen. Something gonna happen. Nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden, zzz, the sound comes, and it's like a chainsaw sawing the sky above me. The sound starts happening, and I'm thrust into a nightmare, a literal night. And one of the things about ibogaine is that it puts you in a dream state. And so you are in a 100% in a dream state while also being 100% awake. It's a very strange feeling. So I'm fully awake, but I'm like, oh, I'm dreaming. And this is what a dream feels like. It's like those little moments in the early AM hours where you're coming between your dreams and waking, where you're realizing you can shut the door, or you can pull your pants back on, or you can, the monster's not actually there, or you can actually swing your fist and hit, where you're coming out of the dream that you've been in, and
Dreaming,
in
yeah.
that in between state. But you feel, oh, that's what dreams feel like. And that's the only time you ever really know what dreams feel like, is when you're still straddling that line between the dream and the waking state. That is what an Ibogaine experience is like. You're straddling that experience. So you're completely awake. I can think, I can take my eye shade off. I can move around very clumsily, but I can move around. But at the same time, it's completely a dream, and it was a nightmare in 4K, Kim.
Ugh.
It was horrible. It was a. I'm seeing things with my consciousness that I've never seen as sharp. I've never seen anything as sharp and as focused with my eyes and as I'm seeing in my mind's eye. It's so real.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of very dark and deep things that were happening, and none of it made any sense to me. And I'm like, well, one, where's the green dragon? And the friendly green dragon.
I signed up for Green Dragon.
I
Where's
said,
my
the
green
friendly
dragon?
green dragon, and I have these demon people, and like fractal transformer, Megatron. They were alien intelligences that were like fractal machine alien intelligence. And when I say alien, I don't mean like little green almond Roswell aliens. I mean so alien from our human experience that I didn't recognize it as. All I could see is that it was a consciousness. It was, I don't want to get into all the bizarre things. It was just a nightmare, and it was very, very, very dark. And there were a few things that spoke to me, but the vast majority didn't speak to me. I didn't know what any of it meant, or what it was getting at, or what the purpose of it was. And at some point, and I started retching. So I started dry heaving, and I felt people pulling me up because I was vile. I was, hurrah! And I didn't know, there's a purge of energy. I didn't know that at the time. I was just, something was coming out of me. And this is 6, 8, 10, 12, violent, like painful, dry heaves, people holding me up with a bowl. I didn't vomit anything up, but these just terrible dry heaves. And I
Mm.
laid back down and I was in this nightmare for all that night because we took our medicine about 8 p.m. and went directly to bed afterwards or to our mattresses. Um, I probably came out of the so ibogaine or ibogaine is, they say, happens in two phases. There's the visionary phase, which is what I was in, this transformative nightmare in 4K, and then there's the contemplative or integrative phase
Mm.
afterwards. So
Yeah.
it kind of happens in two stages, and then the nightmare phase went on for me for till about 1 or 2 in the afternoon the next day, and at that point, I went into the next phase, which was very much very trance-like. I was not having these crazy visions anymore. I was able to kind of realize where I was at and what I was doing, even though physically I wasn't able to do anything but just lay on the mattress. And it was this trance, and that lasted until late afternoon when we went to go get dinner, and the guys were all sitting around the table, and there's like big SEAL Team 6 guys tattooed up, all of us over 200 pounds and stuff, hulking over a table. Some of them are screaming, some of them are crying into their stew. I mean, this was this experience is no joke. The Ibogaine, it's the nuclear option, but it did everything that I could have ever imagined it could do. So the we went back to bed afterwards, and at some point during that night, it's like my fever broke, and
Mm.
the medicine was done and it was over, and I slept at that point. So this has been the whole night, the whole following day, and halfway through the next night. So it's not, and this is a Schedule One drug, like it can be abused for recreational purposes. Nobody is abusing
Who's
iboga.
gonna abuse this one? Now I know.
Nobody does ibogaine for fun. Nobody. Um,
Yeah.
That's like some marquee to say. It's anyway. Nobody does iboga for fun, and no reason for it to be Schedule One. Anyway, um, uh, the next morning I wake up and I feel exhausted, like my body's been wrung out like an old washcloth and thrown in the corner. But I feel clean. I feel so clean. And so we go downstairs and we're all meeting around the fireplace again, and we've got more psychedelics. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm good. I think
Yeah,
I'm good.
it's usually that way, right? Like,
I'm impressed. That was good. I think I'm good. And they're like, no, the 5-MeO is like a nice bookend. It's not at all like the iboga. I'm like, well, it better not be because I could not do that back to back with what I just experienced. And so we're all sitting around, and the 5-MeO or the toad venom, I know nothing about it. Um, we're there. They say it's a shorter experience, and so we're going to go individually. And I'm the third out of five to go. So um, I go outside by the pool, and they say it's helpful to journal. And so I bring my journal out there. I'm sitting by the pool, waiting for the first guys to go, waiting for them to come get me and be my turn. And I try to write, and I write, I don't I. And I can't, I mean, my hand, my brain, and my thoughts and my intentions, none of them are jiving. None of them are mashing up. I'm a complete mess. And I put my pen down, and I think for a minute, and out of frustration, I'm like, nothing happened. I mean, that was a crazy experience. Nothing nothing spoke to me. Nothing, I don't know what any of that means. And then I just took a moment and looked inside, and I felt this cleanliness and purity. Like every bit of scar tissue and accumulated detritus from my entire life had been washed out of me, and I felt clean for the first time since I was probably 10 years old. And I only noticed all these things were gone. That I only noticed that they had ever been there by their absence.
mm.
So as I'm sitting there savoring this feeling, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. If I get nothing else from this, if none of this ever makes sense again, this right now is worth all of what I went through. This is incredible. And so I started writing and I said, I think I had expectations for the medicines. As much as I tried not to, I had expectations. I wanted a green dragon, you know. I had these expectations, but I don't have any expectations for 5-MeO. I don't even know what it is. They told me it's Toadvim. I know nothing. So what it's going to be is what it's going to be. And about at that time, I hear our first guy from the house about 50 yards away screaming like his head is being cut off. I'm like, wow.
Oh, that's a good
Yeah,
for
great.
you. Like, wait a second, you guys said this was better than.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
before you go into the DMT, I'd love to just sort of reflect a little bit. You mentioned, well, that you were confronted by a lot in the
Yeah.
Ibogaine experience. What I understand for Navy SEALs is that you guys, it is the creme de la creme in terms of those that are, you have to confront things quite literally no most people can't even imagine. And I know there's a lot of psychological training, and they have a lot of psychological uh, preparation when you are training in the Navy SEALs. Do you
Yeah.
feel like that helped you prepare for this, or was that just like, nope, I couldn't have prepared for Ibogaine?
I don't think I could have. I think what I did, just the pre-integrative stuff that they sent me, was great preparation. Also, I think I've been preparing for this my whole life with spiritual pursuits and things I had read and experiences I had had, none of which compared to this, but which were in the same ballpark. The preparation for the SEALs, nothing really scares you. Face your fears at such a deep level in order to make it through the training that nothing really, if it does scare you, you move right into it. So I think there's that. I mean, the experience, like the Ibogaine, the Iboga, is so powerful and it's so confrontational. Maybe that's not the right word, but there's such a powerful experience,
Confrontational makes sense.
experience
Yeah, that's what I would
that
call
it's not. I don't think it's for everybody. It's the nuclear option. But
it.
what was great about it is I feel like one of my friends, one of the guys who was there, the ranger, who ended up becoming a great friend of mine. He knows. Uh, he went down to Peru and learned how to do ceremonies and make ayahuasca and stuff with with um, Dennis McKenna. Um, so I mean, he's really in the psychedelics world, and he was there, and he was the only one who wasn't just locked in a rictus of rigor mortis on his mattress uh, during for like 36 hours.
Mhm.
After, the next day he was up and he was moving around, and I asked him afterwards, I'm like, hey, bro, what was your experience like? And he was like, it was love and light. I'm like, wow, because that's not none of us had anything resembling that. And he's like, well, he said, I've sat with ayahuasca 48 times. And he's like, the first 8 or 9 of those were just brutal. And, uh, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, as I worked through that, it's just gotten progressively more love and light when I sit with any medicine anymore. And so everything for me since that Ibogaine experience has been love and light. And I think that, if I would have gone with a little bit more of a manageable medicine, or one that's not quite as confrontational, if I'd sat with ayahuasca a bunch of times, it probably would have taken me a lot longer to work through what I needed to work through. Even though I don't know what I worked through, the medicine really did it all on its own, because I can tell you a few things, but for the most part, I don't know what happened. I just know what I felt like coming out from the other side.
Yeah.